He wasn't the kingpin on the posters. He wasn't the man giving orders on camera, but inside the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the CJNG, one name kept showing up wherever the money moved and the bodies fell. Julio Alberto Castillo Rodríguez, El Chorro. To US Treasury officials, he's not just family. He's El Mencho's son-in-law, married into the inner circle, and the Treasury Department has described him as a senior CJNG figure whose influence at the port of Manzanillo helped the cartel obtain precursor chemicals used to manufacture fentanyl. Other investigators have also alleged he functioned as a financial operator, tied to laundering and internal payments that keep hit squads fed, armed, and loyal. On June 23, 2015, Mexican forces grabbed him in Zapopan, Jalisco, alongside El Mencho's son, El Menchito. No shootout, no headlines like a battlefield. Just a fast, surgical arrest, the kind that tells you the state believes the real war is happening in spreadsheets, safe houses, and phone calls. But on July 1st, 2015, a judge ordered his release, citing insufficient evidence and due process violations. Because if you can't control the cash, you can't control the cartel. And El Chorro, investigators say, was the one keeping El Mencho's empire flowing. To understand why El Chorro mattered, you have to understand what CJNG was becoming. In the early 2010s, Mexico's underworld was shifting, and the cartel out of Jalisco wasn't trying to be low profile. CJNG grew by fighting rivals head-on, buying protection where it could, and using intimidation where it couldn't. Julio Alberto Castillo Rodríguez was born on October 11, 1976 in Apatzingan, Michoacán, according to public identifiers tied to US sanctions listings. Investigators say he didn't rise as a street legend, he rose as a trusted operator, and his access came through family. Castillo married Jessica Johanna Oseguera Gonzalez, El Mencho's daughter. In cartel terms, that's not romance, it's a security clearance. By 2015, authorities and reporting framed the inner circle around El Mencho as two categories of power: the people who can command fear and the people who can control logistics. El Chorro, later named by the US Treasury in sanctions actions linked to CJNG, is described in the public record as a senior CJNG-linked figure. And other investigators and reporting have alleged he operated on the financial and logistics side that keeps cartel structures moving. Then, before dawn on June 23, 2015, soldiers and federal police rolled into a private neighborhood in Zapopan, Jalisco. The operation lasted about 20 minutes, and, according to reported accounts, no shots were fired. He was taken alongside his brother-in-law, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, El Menchito. The message was clear. The state wasn't just hunting shooters, it was hunting the family office. But the story took its first sharp turn fast. On July 1, 2015, a federal judge ordered Castillo released, citing insufficient evidence. From that moment on, El Chorro wasn't just a cartel insider. He was a man who'd seen the door open once, and knew it could slam shut again. In a cartel built on shock and speed, the most dangerous people aren't always the ones holding rifles. They're the ones who decide where the rifles go, who gets paid first, and who gets erased when the organization feels threatened. Mexican authorities described El Chorro as a financial operator tied to CJNG, someone linked to money laundering and the hidden plumbing that keeps a criminal network alive. US Treasury actions later named him under the Kingpin Act for providing material support to CJNG's trafficking activities. And in CJNG's model, finances don't sit in a separate office from violence. Cash moves because fear clears the road for it. Fear spreads because cash keeps the crews moving. That's why investigators have repeatedly paired his name with two jobs at once: moving money and coordinating the muscle. Wikipedia's case history, drawing on Mexican reporting, describes him as a money laundering figure who also reportedly led a hit squad. The turning point comes in April 2016. Just before midday on April 6th, federal forces moved into Guadalajara's Providencia area. The Mexican government described it as a coordinated operation. And the target wasn't a street dealer. It was, in their words, a financial operator, Julio Alberto Castillo Rodríguez. According to the public narrative summarized afterward, agents rolled up fast, cordoned the block, and took him and two associates without firing a shot. But what they said they seized tells you why the arrest mattered. Assault rifles, heavy weaponry, even a rocket-propelled grenade, gear more associated with a paramilitary unit than a businessman. And then the state said the quiet part, out loud. This wasn't only about guns. It was about structure. In the same public account, authorities framed him as someone coordinating laundering schemes and other illicit activities, an arrest meant to disrupt the cartel's financial and operational machinery. Here's the street history irony. The more CJNG grew, the more it needed people like El Chorro, family men in clean clothes who could talk numbers in one room and order death in another. The hitmen get attention, the accountants build empires, and after 2016, the US side starts tightening the net too. In October 2016, OFAC announced sanctions naming Castillo Rodríguez under the Kingpin Act, describing him as providing material support to CJNG's trafficking activities. From that point on, even if he stayed physically out of reach, the message was, the world was coming for the money. Here's what made El Chorro so frustrating for authorities and so useful for CJNG. They kept getting hands on him and he kept slipping back out. After the 2016 operation in Guadalajara, Mexican officials framed the arrest as a direct strike on CJNG's financial and operational structure. But public case summaries also report he was released again later. And that's when the fight moved from handcuffs to banking systems. In October 2016, the US Treasury sanctioned Castillo Rodríguez under the Kingpin Act, publicly tagging him as a CJNG-linked figure and effectively warning the world, doing business with this man can carry severe sanctions consequences. That matters because cartels don't just hide money, they need it to look clean enough to spend, invest, and recycle. By March 2020, Treasury was still naming him as one of the individuals who played a critical role in CJNG's trafficking apparatus, while sanctioning businesses and facilitators tied to cartel networks. In other words, even when you can't catch the operator, you try to collapse the ecosystem around him, the fronts, the fixers, the professionals who keep the machine quiet. And the pressure didn't fade. In June 2025, Treasury described Castillo as a senior CJNG member, alleging his influence at the port of Manzanillo helped CJNG obtain precursor chemicals used to manufacture fentanyl and other drugs, and said he is regarded as a potential successor within the organization. So what did all this do to CJNG? It didn't end the cartel. Groups like CJNG are built to absorb losses, but targeting a financial insider is different than arresting a gunman. If the allegations are accurate, taking away El Chorro doesn't just remove a person, it disrupts payment chains, procurement, laundering routes, and internal trust. And in a cartel, trust is a form of currency. When that currency gets shaken, crews splinter, rivals sniff opportunity, and the boss has to spend more money just to keep people loyal. El Chorro is the kind of figure who proves a cartel isn't just drugs and gunfire, it's administration. If Mexican and US authorities are right about his lane, his real weapon wasn't a rifle, it was access to family, to roots, to the people who move money and make problems disappear. And notice what some public case profiles list. Even after arrests in 2015 and 2016, he's still described as at large, a fugitive-sized gap in a system built on loyalty and fear. So can CJNG recover without him? In the short term, cartels adapt. Someone else signs off on payments. Someone else coordinates enforcement. But replacing a family-trusted financial operator isn't like replacing a commander. It forces new alliances, new risks, and new betrayals. Exactly the kind of instability that creates the power vacuum everyone around CJNG wants to exploit. And in 2025, US Treasury was still describing him as a senior figure, with alleged influence tied to Manzanillo's supply chain, a sign that even now investigators see him as central to how CJNG feeds itself. That's the lasting impact of El Chorro. Whether he's in a cell or on the run, the empire has to keep operating without the one man who allegedly knew where every peso was buried.